All right. I just want to make sure, can you hear me okay? I want to make sure it's coming out of my headphones. Hi, Michael.
Okay. All right. Now I think we should be good. Let me know if there's any sort of issue. So welcome to this session for this week for early start bar prep. I usually call this early intervention as a course that I used to teach and it was paid and I decided to just open up and do it for free now. So please tell your friends about this, etc. if you've been liking it. But just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Maureen. I am the founder and creator of Bar MD. We're a full service bar prep company. A lot of people don't know that we literally do all of it. So if you're taking the UBE, if you're taking California, if you're taking a different jurisdiction where they use the MBE and they use the MPT, we can help with any of those jurisdictions. We are and the really big thing, the thing that sets us apart is a lot of other companies just do sort of a content dump where they just give you lots of videos and like lectures to watch on the law. Whereas what we do at BarMD is we really are focused on showing you how to take and pass the bar exam and literally walking you through it. So that's why I'm doing this webinar series, is to just show you and be able to, you get a preview of what our full course is like. And I go way, way, way deeper in the full courses, just FYI, than I do. I like to do a lot of this stuff and provide a lot of really helpful information in these free series too. But I do go much, much deeper in the actual courses and just cover a really thorough, broad breadth of material. But we like to really show you how to take and pass the bar exam, how to write a passing essay, how to approach the MBE, how to study effectively. Because there's so many people that take this exam, take the bar exam, that are incredibly smart, never failed at anything, and then this is like kind of their first big roadblock or hurdle. So we really that's sort of what we specialize in, is helping, anybody, whether you're a first time taker or a repeater, to really understand how to take and pass the bar exam. We also are, with our live classes, we're helping to hold you accountable, help you to get the work done and to show up and do the things you need to do to pass. So that's a big difference between us, between BarMD and everybody else. We also I like to be really encouraging in general. I meet one-on-one with so many students every single week, and people get down on themselves, especially if you have to retake the exam, if you've taken it once already and you were unsuccessful. So this exam is entirely figure outable. We know really how to, figure out what went wrong with somebody in the past and why they didn't pass, and then figure out what it takes to get them to the passing line. So for anybody that hasn't had a strategy session with me before, you have not had a strategy session this bar cycle, basically since the end of July. If I haven't seen you one on one, you can feel free to make a session with me so we can strategize. Ideally, if you were waiting for results, if you're still waiting, wait until you have that information because it's that data is really helpful. All right, so tonight we are going to get into property. We're going to cover a couple of property multiple choice questions. Then we're going to walk through a property MEE and a little bonus. I'm going to walk through a California essay as well, where we are going to really look at some organizational issues that come up in property. And I'm going to talk about fact use, which is so incredibly important. So, really showing you how much, like I do with the MBEs, if you've been to any of my past webinars, now I'm going to show you some depth in the essays that you can get to. And just one other thing too, something that we like to do and that I like to focus on when I'm teaching is to show you at a minimum everybody knows that this is a minimum competency exam. And I put that in quotes because that's a ludicrous statement. When it comes to the grading, I've seen plenty of people show what I would deem minimum competency, but it doesn't get a passing answer. So I like to show you what is a passing answer, like what does it look like to write a just passing answer, and then how do you get a higher score from there. So that's something that I don't really do in these sessions, but that's something that I'm really big on teaching in all of the full courses as well. So just throwing that out there. All right, let's get into it tonight. And also just I wanted to say welcome to everybody that's here. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you don't mind, tell me in the chat where you're zooming in from and which exam you're taking. I would love to know that. I mean, obviously it's the bar exam, but which state are you taking and when? Just to hear from everybody. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's so helpful for us too, just to gauge timing and all of that. I just went to Maine for the first time. Somebody taking Maine. It was so beautiful. All right. All right. So today we're going to start with deconstructing some property MBEs. We're going to review a property MEE from February 2018. And then we're going to dig into a California property essay as well. And all of, the essays, it doesn't matter the jurisdiction, the approach is the same. It's absolutely the same. And it's beneficial for both. It's beneficial for California to see UBE and vice versa, because the law is the same that applies for these subjects. All right, I'm just getting my multiple choice questions pulled up, but I do have it here. So if you guys want to take a minute and read that, I'm going to put a poll up. Don't type your answers into the chat. I'm going to pull up a poll and have you guys put your answer in it. So give me 1 second. Oh, hold on, that was the wrong one. Here we go. Everybody type your answer or select your answer in the poll too from what you got from this. And I want everybody to participate. So please, please select your answer. Everybody take a few minutes and read this and select the answer. Take another 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to put this up on my iPad and I'm going to walk through it and deconstruct the question for you. I'll share the results in a little bit. Okay. Let me just get this up on the screen. All right, y'all should be able to see what's like a PDF on my screen. So first, I'm going to start with the call of the question always. So is the man liable to the bank for the deficiency? So the fact that they're saying that they mentioned the deficiency, that usually indicates that we're dealing with a mortgage that hasn't been paid off in full yet. So I'm definitely thinking mortgages, but not 100%, but just some clues so you know sort of where to narrow your focus. And then we're asking about, is the man liable? Um, so all right, now let's look at this. And we're gonna diagram and take notes. Diagramming and I talk about this a lot. In the MBE course that we have that's gonna start in November, I will walk you through topic by topic and show you stuff for all of the major topics. So like there's 5 classes on property, one class for each little topic within property, and tips in it to deal with the issues that come up within that topic. So here we have And one of those things I teach is diagramming. So a woman borrowed $800,000 from a bank and gave the bank a note for that amount secured by a mortgage on her farm. So here we say bank gave woman, um, essentially the woman has a mortgage, or the bank has a mortgage on the farm. Several years later, at a time when the woman still owed the bank $750,000 on the mortgage loan, she sold the farm to a man for 900,000. And as she sells it, so 750 is owed, and she sells it for 900. Okay, the man paid the woman $150,000 in cash and specifically assumed the mortgage note. So that means when we see assumption, that means that now the bank can collect from, let's see, the bank can collect from the man directly and the woman at this point. At this point. All right. The bank received notice of this transaction and elected not to exercise the optional due on sale clause in the mortgage. Due on sale clauses are totally enforceable. So are prepayment penalties. They can ask about that in other questions. Just want to mention it here just so that you know that. So if you're not familiar with due on sale clauses, it's exactly what it sounds like, where if you sell the property, you can make the entire amount immediately owing. All right, without informing the man, the bank later released the woman from any further personal liability on the note. Okay, so this is a novation. And what that does is it makes the woman no longer liable. And it doesn't matter that they didn't inform the man. Oops. That doesn't matter. So, but some people get tripped up by that. And I could see another question testing you exactly on that. Like, does that matter? Okay. So now the woman is out, but because of the assumption, and that's why it's important to circle this stuff, the bank can still collect from the man, but they can no longer collect from the woman. So after he had owned the farm for a number of years, the man defaulted on the loan. Everybody defaults in these fact patterns. The bank properly accelerated the loan. That's fine because they have a due on sale. Well, they have, you can accelerate if somebody missed a payment. That's not from the due on sale clause. Well, you could bring that in. Because there was still 600,000 owing on the note, the bank sued the man for the $100,000 deficiency. Is the man liable? Yes, he is liable because he assumed the note. That is it. That's it. So let's start at the top here. And now one thing I want to point out is how many of you, and just tell me in the chat, how many of you have ever done a question and you see one of the answer options and you say, well, I know that's not right, but like, I know it's not right. And that's all you can say about it. How many of you have been there on any of these multiple choice questions? Not necessarily this one, but just on any of them, right? That is a huge, huge sign that you need to dig in on that. And like this is what we're going to do in my classes. I'm going to show you, and what I do is I go through each one and I tell you what is everything that you can pull from that. So anytime you have that, you need to dig in on that, and you need to be able to write an explanation incorporating the facts and the law into like your reason you're striking it in practice, right? So you can go through and do it and answer it, you can strike it out, but you need to dig deeper when you do your review. So keep that in mind. That's a huge, huge problem. That's why people it's a huge part of like why people fail. And even if you've done 5,000 questions, because it's about the depth of the review. Okay, so A, no. So first of all, it's the wrong result. So it should be a yes, it should be a yes. So I'm going to strike A because it should be a yes, but I want to look at the reasoning. Because the woman would have still been primarily liable for payment. It's not true. They can go after both, and it's now the man that's primarily liable. So this misstates the facts, but the bank had released her from personal liability. So this is a little bit irrelevant. It's really a little bit irrelevant. The woman is no longer involved because of the novation. B, no, because the bank's release of the woman from personal liability also released the man. Point one is again the wrong result, so it shouldn't be a no. So because the man is liable for the deficiency, but also this reasoning, because is this reasoning correct? And it's incorrect. The bank's release of the woman does not release the man. So it absolutely does not release the man. So the novation for the woman has no impact on the man. And also, just FYI, I know every single released question that is licensed by the NCBE. And I don't think there is any question where any of the other questions that are available outside of this set where the bank actually gives a novation that I can recall. So that's also the other thing you want to see, like as many questions as possible. We do have in our course, in our core program, every single license question. Um, yeah. So you want to make sure that you do and have done every single one. So C, yes, because the bank's release of the woman constituted a clogging of the equity of redemption. How many of you know off the top of your head what it means to clog the equity of redemption? Tell me if you say you know it or you don't know it. Nobody, right? Yeah, like nobody knows that. I had to look it up today, right? I'm like, I know it, right? Yeah, and it does. Somebody said like stop the foreclosure. Yeah, right. I'm like, okay, like when you think of it, well, I know what a redemption is, right? Like statutory equitable redemption when you think of mortgages, and it's dealing with foreclosure. And so clogging the equity. So we're thinking about an equitable redemption. So it's something about essentially stopping the foreclosure. And clogging it is sort of preventing it, I suppose. But I still had to look it up today because I was just like, yeah, I know that, but I don't really like remember it. So a big thing. I have heard of this, right? I'd heard of this concept. I remember hearing about it when I studied for the bar, over a decade ago. So that is when I heard of it. It's just like generally it's an incorrect answer. So I remember that, but sometimes things are in your brain somewhere and you're like, well, I should know that better, but don't ever pick that answer. And people do it all the time because you think, well, I should know that. That's not true. So incorrect. Um, the release is not a clogging of the equity of redemption either. It's not stop. That's dealing with foreclosure sales. We don't have a foreclosure here. Well, we do have it did sell at a foreclosure, but he hasn't paid it off. So clogging the equity of redemption deals with paying off a mortgage and being able to reclaim your property despite a foreclosure. So, and then D, yes, because the man's personal liability on the note was not affected by the bank's release of the woman. So this is the right result. And it's exactly the right reasoning. It's getting at the assumption of the note and the novation. So it really gets at all of the facts. So D is our correct answer, which is what most of you picked. But I know some people said they clicked the wrong answer too. So there's the results, a few A's, a few B's, a few C's, and then mostly D's. I'm going to go back to the clogging the equity of redemption means in a minute. I will go back to that in just a minute. Just want to share those results. Yeah, if you haven't been to one of these workshops before, what I do generally is I'm going to talk through it, diagram it, walk it out, and then I have sort of like some summary points um, on my slides. So let's just go through this for a second. Okay. So looking at these again, clogging the equity of redemption is just, it's not that it would really ever work, but I guess the way that when it would be applicable is when somebody can pay off the amount owed for a foreclosure and get their property back. But that's when we have the distinction between an equitable right of redemption and a statutory right of redemption. So that's where a property goes into foreclosure. And what matters is when the person paid it off. So if we're talking about redemption of a mortgage, and I'm just answering this and explaining it because of a question in there. I didn't type this on the screen, so just listen up for a second. So with the redemption, what it is, it's paying off the amount that's owed, the amount that's in default on a mortgage. So I think generally all jurisdictions have an equitable right of redemption, and that means if you pay off the amount owed the amount owed on a property that's in foreclosure, if you pay it off prior to the foreclosure sale, you get your property back and you avoid the foreclosure sale. When there is a statutory right of redemption, that means you can pay off the amount that's owed even after a foreclosure sale and you can get the property back. So that's equitable versus statutory right of redemption. So clogging the equity of redemption, I would assume it's a equitable redemption, like I just talked about, or it is, and then it's clogging it, so it's preventing that equitable redemption from happening. All right. So just to go over that concept. So let's just walk through these again. So looking at A quickly, um, this is also just an incorrect statement because it with A, it misstates the facts. The man's assumption actually makes him primarily liable, not the woman. So once you assume, you become primarily responsible. And if there is not a novation, which is what usually happens, that means the person in the middle is secondarily liable. They're the guarantor. So that creates a surety relationship. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, so B, um, yeah, the woman, yeah, exactly, Mari. The woman is now secondarily liable. So yeah, A also misstates the facts. I knew I was forgetting to mention something. That's why I do these notes. So B, right? It's incorrect. It misapplies the law. So the releasing the woman does not also release the man. C, and again, this is what I explained at the beginning of putting these slides up. The equity of redemption principle does not apply. That has to do with the borrower's right to pay off a loan and reclaim property even after default. So we're just not dealing with that because he hasn't paid it off. And then D is our correct answer. And it only involves a novation is a release of liability, and it releases the original debtor essentially from the contract. So some other tips from this question and just on property in general, a huge area where I see people miss questions is the assumption versus subject to. So scenario is this: woman takes a loan from a bank. Woman later transfers loan obligation to another person. So you have to look at the language. Um, I always circle whether the words in the fact pattern, do they assume or do they take subject to? It's key. So if there's an assumption, the new person or the transferee is personally liable to the original creditor, usually a bank, but it could be anybody. So then the bank can go after M and W. And the transferor, the original mortgagee, is a guarantor. So that means there's a surety relationship. I forgot to close my parentheses there. Between the original mortgagee and the transferee. So sometimes you'll see that there is the law of suretyship applies. You got to know what that means. Remember, suretyship is one of those things that's subject to the statute of frauds. So that contract needs to be in writing. So this is how you can take all these different rules and put them together into a fact pattern, and it's testing you on multiple different things at the same time. And then if they take subject to, the new person is not personally liable to the original creditor, and the bank can only go after W. And I've been trying to like make these little images and I couldn't get the sizing right. So, but assumption, and like I have the bank with all the money, right? The bank's happy because they've got all the money. And the assumption on the left, and they're both sad because they're both going to be parts. The bank can sue both of them if they like run out of money, and then they're both now liable, right? Subject to, the woman is sad, the man's happy because the bank can't sue him. But the man should be like not all the way happy because the woman could sue the man, but you don't have a big bank with lots of money going after you. So thanks. I'm messing around with doing these images, so let me know if these help you guys. But I'm trying to just make stuff memorable for everything. All right. All right, let's move on to the next one. It sounds like people like the images. And I try to do them for a lot of different stuff where I see people mess up a lot because I know every single MBE question. I know where people mess up. I know the things where people make mistakes, and we're going to talk about that and walk through this quite a lot. So these images are sort of funny, and they're not perfect, but I'm working on it. Um, and that's also perfection is the enemy of completion, right? So I try to do everything as perfectly as possible, but it can be tough sometimes. All right. Somebody asked, why is the man only sort of happy with the subject to? Because the bank can't sue him. The arrows here show who the bank can sue. When it's subject to, the bank can only sue the woman. Yeah. So um he's sort of sad. So somebody asked why is he sort of sad? Because the woman can still sue him, but the bank can't sue him. So he should still sort of be sad because he can still get sued, but it's not the bank. Yeah. All right, now let's look at the next question. Oh, oh yeah, here's actually a couple of notes. So what MBET just broadly, right? And I mentioned this a minute ago, but if you don't know a concept, don't pick that answer. I even had to look up at clogging the equity of redemption today to remind myself. So just because it's vaguely familiar doesn't necessarily mean that you should know it or that it must be right. And let me know if you're like me, where I'm always like, um, well, that's something I probably should know. And oh God, Maureen, you don't know enough. You're gonna fail, blah, 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 blah. And like, I'm like, you should pick that. That's probably the right thing. And like, you need to do some more work on this and like really hard on myself. So, that must be right. So it just places that little seed of doubt. But if you don't know it, assume that it's because you probably don't need to know it, even if it sounds vaguely familiar. And it just tells you you need to look into that thing. So that, and then for every MBE question, if you can't write an explanation like I do, that's really just short and sweet, and it should say incorporating the facts in the law to explain why an incorrect answer is incorrect, you need to do more. And that's why I'm doing this Mastering the MBE course, because I will dig into all of that. We're going to basically go through together almost 410 MBE questions. It's going to be so good. And there's tips galore and images and all this sort of stuff. So I'm super excited if you can't tell, even though it's so much work and there's 25 live classes, which is wild. But it's going to be a good time. Yeah. All right. Now let's go on to this next question. So everybody take a few minutes and read it. I'm going to get that poll back up. Oh, somebody asked, is clogging a real term or something they made up? It's a real term. It's just sort of an outdated, outmoded thing. And then when you're done, pick your correct answer. And don't type your answer in the chat. Try to just put it in the poll, please. Oh. The poll is you might have to move the poll for you if it's in the way, because for me it's completely out of the way. I'm gonna do that, Tiffany. So if the poll is blocking your view, it's because of your screen settings, not mine. All right. Now let's go and look at this on my iPad. And just for a heads up, if the poll was blocking your view, it's something with how you have the settings set up. It's not on my end. Okay. There we go. And this question is so tricky. So I love doing this one. Somebody said you can just move the screen for the poll. You just slide it over, it's movable. So for those of you that are having that trouble. Okay. So start with the call to question. In this action, who will prevail? Super broad call. It doesn't give us a lot of help. So let's walk through it. You've got to take notes in property questions, in contracts questions, and in civil procedure. Pretty much in everything, but these three in particular, if you don't, you're gonna have a real tough time, and don't rely on your memory because it's just not gonna happen. I can't do it. So, and I know all the questions in advance and I can't do it. Okay. So 23 years ago, so I do 23 YA for years ago. A woman who owned a tract of land in fee simple absolute deeded it to her son. The woman gave to son and his heirs so long as the premises are used for residential purposes. So the so long as um, the so long as indicates that this is a fee simple determinable. So this is an FSD, fee simple determinable. What does that mean? That means that once you violate the condition, it automatically reverts to the prior owner. So if the condition is violated, if that condition is violated, then it automatically goes back to the woman. And at the same time, if the woman doesn't kick the person out, um, if the woman doesn't kick the person out, then the clock for adverse possession begins to run. All right. So, a one-story building located on the land was used by the son as his home for the next 11 years. Okay. 12 years ago. So now I'm going to do 12 YA. The son conveyed the land to a friend who immediately began to use it for commercial purposes. So F. And so at that point, when they violated it, now the clock, 12 years ago, the clock started running for adverse possession. Um, okay. The son conveyed the land to a friend who immediately began to use it for commercial purposes and continued to do so until her death 4 years ago. So 12 years ago. So then 4 years ago, it went from F to H. Okay, the friend died intestate and the land possessed to her sole heir, who went into immediate possession and at all times thereafter, sorry for the typo there, has used the land for commercial purposes. Okay, so now H, and then so we can tack the 8 years that S had it and the 4 years here. So there's been a total of 12 years. We can tack those together, and it's been adversely possessed. So that's the kicker on this, as Sam said in the chat. So now H owns it outright. H owns it outright. And even if you didn't track all that, the other three answers have complete misstatements in them. So we'll look at that. Okay. And I'm gonna talk about future interest in a minute. So the period of time to acquire title by adverse possession in the jurisdiction is 10 years. So H has it via adverse possession. There are no other applicable statute. The woman has sued the friend's heir for possession. In this action, who will prevail? And we know the heir is going to prevail based on my note taking. So I know that I can kick C and D, but I still want to look at it. So let's start with D. The woman, because once the friend began to use the land for commercial purposes, the friend's interest became uninheritable. That's just not true. It didn't become uninheritable. The problem with it is that that it automatically went back to the woman and the clock for adverse possession started to run. So D is incorrect because it doesn't become uninheritable. So it's still inheritable. And you can inherit the adverse possession intact. C, the woman, because her cause of action against the heir did not begin until the heir inherited the land from the friend. That's not true. The cause of action accrued once the condition was met. Condition for FSD, the simple determinable met. B, the heir, because she has a fee simple determinable in the land. She doesn't have a fee simple determinable, she has a fee simple because of adverse possession. So this misapplies the law. I'm missing an E there, but that's okay. So misapplies because she has a fee simple, has FSA, not FSD. So they need a quiet title still, but they still do actually have at fee simple absolute. And then A is the correct answer. She has a fee simple absolute in the land. So A is our correct answer. Which is what most people got, but about half the people that responded got it wrong. More than half. So this one was really tricky for most people. A lot of people picked D. And the thing to know with D is like a lot of people, especially for those of you that picked D, maybe you didn't understand the reasoning. right? Did you think that it was actually true that the friend's interest became uninheritable, or did you just think the woman should win? So you've really got to make sure that your reasoning and your result match up. And if it's incongruent in any way, or if you don't fully understand the response, that's a huge hint, and you have to dig into that. And this is all the type of stuff I'm going to be digging into in the Mastering the MB class. So let's go look at my notes. I've got quite a bit to say about this one too. And I'm getting lots. Um, I'm getting lots of questions and comments about this. So just know on this question, the key is it's a fee simple determinable. So with the fee simple determinable, the land actually automatically, there's a right of reversion. So the woman is the owner of the land, and she had to go in and kick the heir off the property once the term was violated. And she had 10 years to do so. She didn't. So as soon as the right of reversion kicks in, and it's now the woman's, um, now the woman can go in and kick them out. And if she does, it's also when the clock for adverse possession begins. Yeah. And somebody said if the son and the heir were using it for a purpose not intended by using it for commercial, that's hostile. Yeah, it's hostile is really that you're using it like against the other person's will. So yeah, I guess you could say using it for a different purpose. It's violated. So, and also keep in mind, even if like, and I think that even if, the person went back to using it for residential purpose, then it would go to the woman's. So even if they'd gone back to it, they'd already lost it under the fee simple determinable because it automatically reverts. And somebody asked, well, what about the woman having died? Her son inherited it. So to go to the woman's heir, her son. But it goes back to the woman's estate, and then whoever gets her estate would get it. Maybe is it the woman's son? Okay, so okay, let's go back to, yeah, so if they lost it by not following the conditions, that's where the hostility began. Yeah, that's where all the elements for adverse possession is you're there without permission. Yeah, and the woman has title. She's actually entitled to possession. She's not in actual possession, but she is the rightful possessor. Okay. Um, all right. All right. Okay. Um, so we're gonna look here. So A is our correct answer. That's correct because the heir required a fee simple absolute via adverse possession. So you had to catch that. This is also in large part why reading outlines doesn't, it's helpful, obviously, to a certain degree. Um, it's helpful to a certain degree. But you have to really see the interplay of all the rules. That's why you've got to just dig in. And anybody that feels like I don't know enough, I can't do the questions, I don't know enough law, just dig in and start doing it because you could read a whole horn book on it and you're still going to miss stuff because it's the interplay of the rules together. That's where it really becomes tricky. B, the heir because she had a fee simple determinable. So this misstates the law. The fee simple determinable actually ended as soon as the friend began using it for commercial purposes. C is also incorrect. It misstates the law because the cause of action accrued as soon as it was used for other than residential purposes. So the failure to act is what caused the woman to lose the property via adverse possession. And then D is incorrect again because it misstates the law because violating a condition of the fee simple determinable doesn't actually render the property uninheritable. If the property isn't, the heir here, they could inherit the adverse possession estate. So a lot to get from these questions, right? So future interest. I don't know why I thought this was a good image for future interest. Because it's like going off into the future, into the unknown. Um, but just some thoughts on that. So this is an area that tends to be really tricky for a lot of people. So it's part of the ownership subtopic. Property MBEs are broken down into 5 subtopics. Ownership is the first one in the list of the topics from the NCBE. There's so much that's covered in it. It includes landlord tenant, it includes stuff like rule against perpetuities and other weird rules. And it just, there's so much involved in it. So I generally say, for future interest, I don't want you to spend a ton of time. And when I say a ton of time, like you should not spend multiple days trying to really understand future interests. Um, because the likelihood is there's going to be like 1 to 2 questions that really truly test on that concept. It could come up on the essays though. They do that, not a ton, but they do it. It usually tends to be a little bit easier though. And then learn how to diagram though when you do. And often, like in my class, I have when I learned future interest in law school, I just did it really thoroughly. So I have some stuff from materials to just kind of like review all of the future interests and some exercises. So in the MBE course, we'll go into it a little bit sooner. But the key is really the diagramming and taking notes as you go and knowing like, okay, like you write who did it go to, you cross people out as they die. There's just certain little tips. All right. So now we're going to switch over and we're going to work on the essay. So it is the February 2018 property essay. So I will put the link to it in the chat, but we sent it out when we invited everybody to this session, but I will also put it just in the chat, the link. Oops. Oh, sorry, everybody, just having a tiny little tech issue for a second. Okay. So if you don't have the fact pattern, I'm going to put it up on the screen in a second. But it's just on the NCBE website. And don't mind the 3,000 tabs I have open. Okay. So everybody just take a few minutes and read through this fact pattern. I'm gonna have the call. I'm gonna just leave the fact pattern up and not the call of the questions entirely. Let me answer that at the end. I might have used the wrong language, said the wrong language in class. And so she did get an automatic reversion to answer your question. But the other one, then you would have a right of reverter. Everybody, let me know in the chat when you're done reading. Good. I'm going to take another couple minutes to finish reading it. For any of you that are here, tell me in the chat if this is your first time coming to one of my live webinars. I'm just curious. Hey, Deanna. Hi. Is it Adanya? Ben and Michelle. Oh, Michelle, I think you're just done. Samuel, nice. But Samuel, we've talked on the phone. Marina. Oh, Laura, good. Zanetta, David, Samuel. Yeah. Hey, Vanessa. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through this fact pattern and I'm going to write the entire answer start to finish in front of you. So you're going to see how we can sort of put this together. And I'm going to write it at like a little bit more of a basic level to show you at a minimum what would you need to do on this essay. So to just sort of like show you how to really walk through it. Um, so let's see. I have just a blank Word doc open here. And I'm not going to answer your questions for a bit as I get into this. So let's just start with the call of the question and let's talk about it. So, which present title covenants, if any, did the developer breach with respect to the utility easements? So, as soon as I see easements, I think a covenant against encumbrances, and they're only talking about the present title covenants, not the future. So, there's with the general warranty deed, there's the three present and three future. So, yeah. So, I'm going to think of the covenant against encumbrances. Um, yeah. So, number two, assuming that there was a breach of one or more of the present title covenants, can the man recover damages from the developer for the breach? Explain. Three, may the man force the utility company that installed the underground sewer lines to remove them from the land? Explain. Which probably not. That sounds terrible, but we'll have a look. And four, may the man recover the $5,000 in damages from the developer. So one thing to keep in mind, and they've tested this a couple of times in recent history, where they're talking about a warranty of basically an applied warranty of habitability for new construction. So because we're talking about a developer, then we're thinking probably more likely to be new construction. All right, so let's walk through the fact pattern. So, and I might just set up my answers here. Oops, let me get the header closed. So one, let me just make, I'm going to make the font bigger so you can see it. Give me a second. Okay, one, the issue is weather. In California, folks, you don't need to write the issue as weather. Um, and even for UBE folks, you really don't have to, but it is sort of a little bit more standard. So the issue of whether the developer breached any present title covenants, um, Ray, the utility easements. Okay, I'm going to type the second one. Can the man recover damages from the developer because of the breach, assuming there is a breach? And I'm going to leave my typos in because you can have typos. It's not a problem. May the man force the utility co to remove the sewer lines, and may the man recover the 5,000 in damages from the developer. Okay, and you could put the issue as whether. I sort of forgot after question one, but that's okay. We're just gonna leave it. The bar is imperfect. It's okay. We're talking like minute, like true. What is true minimum competency? What's a true just passing answer look like? As an aside, I'm just gonna plug a future webinar I'm doing, which I've been doing a ton of work on making a guide for bar studiers on using ChatGPT to effectively grade your bar essays so that you can input them. So I've been working on just all the various prompting for this task specifically and what to do. And I think it's in the middle of November. I have a webinar on that that's free. Please tell everybody you know about it to come. It's going to be super helpful, I promise, and probably pretty short. So just as an FYI, and I'm going to incorporate that into my teaching for all of my classes as well. Yes, November 19th. Sawa's got that down. Thank you, Sawa. All right, let's get into the facts here. So, a developer acquired a 30-acre tract of land zoned for residential use. The developer thereafter marked out 60 building lots. I'm gonna move this over my answer just to make it a little bigger for you guys. The developer granted various utility providers appropriate easements to install underground sewer and utility lines. These utility easements were promptly and properly recorded. So anybody that buys these properties is on notice. You're on record notice, which is a type of implied notice. So subsequently, the developer contracted with a man to build a home for the man on one of the 60 lots. The contract provided that at closing, the developer would convey the home and lot to the man by a warranty deed, accepting all easements and covenants of record. So these are accepted from it, which trips a lot of people up because there's some special rules here. The home was completed 9 months later. At the closing, the developer conveyed the home and lot to the man by a valid warranty deed containing the 6 title covenants. Notwithstanding the language in the contract, the deed contained no exceptions to these 6 covenants. The deed was promptly and properly recorded. 2 months later, following a heavy storm, the man, and so now it sort of takes a turn, which tells us we're going into a sort of different thing. 2 months later, following a heavy storm, the man discovered rainwater in the basement level of his home. 3 bedrooms were located on this level, and the influx of rainwater made all of them unusable. An expert determined that the cause of the rainwater influx was a defect in the construction of the home's foundation. So this is new development, and generally speaking, there's an implied warranty of habitability with new construction. There's also issues if you're not familiar with this as it relates to new construction. There is this implied warranty. It has been tested even more recently than this. I think it was in 2024. Not 100% sure off the top of my head. But they also tested like the transferability of that warranty and how does it go, who does it transfer to, etc. So there's definitely some nuance here to know. So just throwing that out there. All right. The man contacted the developer, who denied any responsibility for the influx. Rather than argue with the developer, the man contacted a plumber who concluded that the problem could be solved by installing a sump pump in the basement. The plumber accurately told the man that the usual cost of installing a sump pump was $750, but that the location of the sewer lines coming into the home created more work, raising the installation cost to $1,500. The man told the plumber to install the pump. Thereafter, the man sued the developer for $5,000 in damages for the cost of the sump pump, its installation, and damage to the floors and carpeting in the basement. He also sought additional damages for breach of one or more of the title covenants, sorry. So again, which present title covenants, if any, did the developer breach with respect to the utility easements? Explain. Assuming there was a breach of one or more of the present title covenants, can the man recover damages from the developer for the breach? May the man force the utility company that installed the underground sewer lines to remove them? Generally, no. And 4, may the man recover the $5,000 in damages from the developer? So let's start with this first one. And so the thing that I do here is I'm going to put all of the relevant facts into the fact pattern. I don't type in any rules yet. We just want to identify, well, what are the issues? So the issue here is, the warranty deed. And particularly, so I like to make my headings bold, like my major headings. So I'm just going to do that real quick, do a tiny bit of formatting. I usually do this as I go, but I think I was talking when I did it. Okay, so this is a warranty deed. And which of the warranties do we think is involved here? So what are they? So we have covenant of Sazin, covenant of right to convey, covenant against encumbrances. Those are your 3 present warranties. Then you also have covenant of quiet enjoyment, warranty, and further assurances. So yeah, so it says covenant against encumbrances. So I'm going to deal with that. Okay, so I think it's that issue there. And the man recovered damages from the developer. This is really just recovery for breach. So breach of covenant against encumbrances. Okay. What about removing this? Can you force them to remove it? So how many of you saw this and you're like, I have no idea what the rule would be, but what facts are in the fact pattern around this? What facts do we know about the man and the sewer lines and his What would make it like really unfair to be able to force the sewer company to remove them? Yeah, the easement. So, and somebody said that they used the easement and the fact that it was recorded. So he was on notice of it. So I'm going to focus on that. So notice, yeah, notice of easements. That really comes into play. And then the last issue, can you recover the damages? This sort of, other issue is the implied warranty of habitability for new homes. Okay. Now I want to put in the actual facts here. I'm going to just put in the facts from the fact pattern. So let's say minimum. Um, Waste is a little bit different. That somebody said, couldn't you talk about waste? Somebody asked that. And waste deals with like a life tenant. It deals with other people. So a different issue. And if there's ever something where you think, oh, is it this issue? And it turns out you're wrong, you should dig into that issue and say, okay, well, when does that apply? So it's a good non-example of like, why is that not relevant here? Okay, so first, the developer conveyed the home and the lot to the man by valid warranty deed. Um, so he conveyed it with all of the covenants. Um, okay, it says the contract says at closing, the developer, and I'm just going to say D, would convey the home and lot to M by general warranty deed, accepting all easements and covenants of record. Okay, covenant against encumbrances. Um, the developer, so there are encumbrances, right? Because there's these easements. The developer granted various utility providers appropriate easements to install underground sewer and utility lines. Why do I put all this stuff in here, right? Why do I put in the facts first? People often want to like rush and get to the rules. Facts and analysis get you points, rules, sort of. But facts and analysis are way more important. When I put in my facts, it's half of my analysis. So it's really key to understand, where do the points come from? I've had people that I've worked with so many foreign trained lawyers, English isn't their first language, etc. And we have to figure out how can they write a passing answer when they have to literally translate. It's so difficult. And for a lot of them, it's really just we're gonna not write, we're gonna be kind of skimpy on the rules. It's hugely, hugely important. Focus on the analysis. So so the breach. So assuming there is a breach, right? Can he recover damages? So let's just think about a few different things here. What type of easements are these? These are sewer. Is that like different from like electrical, right? Electrical, you're gonna see electrical stuff usually, unless they're all underground. But let's say it's for like electrical poles, that's gonna be totally visible to you, right? So these maybe aren't visible, but they have been recorded. Um, Easements have been recorded. Um, Inspection, they were on notice. And yeah, so I'm just gonna say, on notice. That's fine. We can just leave it at that. There's a little bit of an issue here because the developer did contract to exclude the easement from the deed, but the deed he didn't actually exclude them in the deed. So there's a little bit of a problem there. Do you absolutely have to get at that issue? Not necessarily, but we want to make sure that let's get to the basics first. May the man force the utility company? Let's see. On this, I'm gonna actually put this under here. It doesn't really matter. So notice of easements. So easements. Let me move this. Easements were recorded promptly and properly before the man purchased the land. Okay, implied warranty. So defect in the construction. Also, don't fight the facts. Accept the fact that There was a defect. They told you that they said the cause. Don't try to be like, well, we don't know that he definitely was the cause. I see people go off on tangents like that all the time. Don't do it. Just accept the facts. Defect in the construction of the home's foundation. The fact that it was also like, when was it discovered? Oops. Only 2 months after closing. Okay. We've got like at a minimum the relevant facts. Next step, I'm going to put in my rules and I'm going to show you how to do really simple rules. Really, really, really simple rules. So, um, and how do we turn this into analysis? So I've got my relevant facts in that I need at a minimum. It just took me just a few minutes to get those in, not very long. I've read through it. I've probably been marking it up as I've done it. Um, and in the class, I'm gonna like actually mark it all up in front of you. I think I did this last week. I didn't do it today. Um, but now I'm gonna go issue by issue. I'm gonna type in the relevant rule, keep it tight at a minimum, and then turn what I've written for my facts into my analysis. All right. So I'm going to say a general warranty deed warrants against defects in title. Sorry, I need to get the chat out of the way. In title, including, and I'm just going to keep it short, including the covenant against encumbrances. Okay, that's it. You can just keep your rule literally that simple. How many of you think that you would have put way more? People always ask me, they're like, oh, can you really do that little of a rule? Yeah, you can absolutely keep it that simple. So I'm going to say here, because, here the developer, yeah, you don't need to list the six. You don't even have to go through and like further define the covenant against encumbrances. Your analysis demonstrates your understanding of how to apply the rule. So here the developer breached the covenant against encumbrances because um because the developer conveyed the home and the lot to the man by valid warranty deed. And let's see, conveyed by valid warranty deed. Um, let's see, and conveyed the lot to the man with um, easements on the land. And an easement is an encumbrance. There's part of me that just wants to write a little bit more, so I am. So, and then here I could use this for a counter argument, right? Well, what about the fact that the contract says this, right? At closing, he didn't include it in the deed. So you can make a counter argument. So although the contract between the M and D says at closing, the deed would convey the home and the lot by general warranty deed, accepting all easements and covenants of record, which suggests D did not violate this argument or did not breach. This argument is unpersuasive because yeah, don't survive. Yeah. Because the deed did not include the exception on the deed. Just something simple like that. So covenant is against encumbrances. I basically have covered it really above, but if you wanted to give a little bit more detail, yeah, you can and use the specific facts. So actually, I'm just gonna leave it at that. We don't need to go more. So recovery for breach of the covenant against encumbrances. So a lot of people don't know the little rules that are involved here. So is there a breach? Yes. Despite the fact that he said that they wouldn't be or that he was going to accept those, he forgot to. That's on him. So did he breach? Absolutely. You can get into some detail regarding the merger doctrine, et cetera, here, which I'm not going to get into that, but how would we go from a basic, like from a just passing to a passing? I would get into more detail on the various rules that might apply. Okay, so on notice, so recovery. So there's a jurisdictional split here. So generally, under the majority rule, a buyer can recover for a breach of the covenant against encumbrances, even if the buyer knows of the encumbrance. So you actually, under the majority rule, you can. A better answer would include the minority, which this kind of goes against our intuition, I think. Under the minority rule, you can't recover if you knew of the physical encumbrance. So I'm going to say, so generally, a buyer can recover for breach of the covenant against encumbrances, even if the buyer is on notice of the encumbrance prior to closing. Under the minority rule, a buyer cannot recover in such a circumstance. A better answer is going to have better rules with more detail and more specific language. This is fine. This is totally fine. So here, under the majority general rule, the man can recover for breach because he can recover for breach because there was an encumbrance, the easements on the land. In in a minority jurisdiction, the man cannot recover because the easements were recorded prior to closing and the man was explicitly made aware of them. I think so, by the developer. And then your call to question always tie back to, or your conclusion should always tie back to the call to question. So the man can um, probably recover in a majority of jurisdictions. So thus, and the reason I write the facts in, even though like here I didn't actually take the facts that I wrote in and incorporate them, is because once you put them in there, you're not digging through the fact pattern. You're not looking at the fact pattern anymore. And it goes faster on here because I'm on a screen, whereas in person, when you're taking the exam and you get the fact patterns on paper, you're gonna have it in front of you, and you're gonna be looking down and up and down and up. So when you just type in the facts that you need into your answer, it saves you time from digging. I hear people all the time tell me that they're just slow to type. And I challenge that often because unless you're somebody that like literally hunts and pecks when you type and you haven't trained to like whatever modernly used type, um, it's usually from people stopping and pausing and thinking and going back into the fact pattern and looking for facts. So I want you to get that out of the way. That's really what is saving us time and allowing us to finish. Because how many of you have trouble finishing your essays? And for UBE, 30 minutes, California, 60 minutes, right? So this is how you do that. And it takes practice. And if you're a handwriter, and I will get into this in the course as well, that you just it's a little bit different, but you just skip some pages and start at the top putting in the heading. Yeah, I know there's several handwriters, and I do have some strategy for that too. All right. So thus the man can recover in a majority jurisdiction, but not in a minority. Okay. May the man so notice easements. So here I'm like, all right, well, what if we didn't know the rule? And I do a whole thing about like, how do you know the rule? So I'm going to say generally a court will not force um, a company to remove, uh, easements to remove the sewer lines if the man had notice of the easements when they purchased land. Okay. So here, the man had notice of the easements when he purchased the land because the easements were recorded promptly before the man purchased the land. Fine. Answer the call to question. Thus, the court will not force the utility company to remove the sewer lines. Okay, and then what about this last thing? Implied warranty of habitability for new homes. I'm going to add in a rule. A builder of a new home impliedly warrants to the buyer that the home is habitable and fit for its intended purpose. Also, I know these rules, right? So you do have to have obviously some law knowledge to do this. And I talk about later and much later in the course, how do you make up rules? So a buyer can recover damages or losses stemming from defective construction. Um, okay, so long as they are discovered within a reasonable time of delivery. I think it's usually like about a 10-year period too, I think. I might be making that up, but I think that's probably a reasonable time. It is, right? Thanks, Michael. I don't know where that came from. That happens all the time. So here there is a breach of the implied warranty of habitability because the home has a defect in the construction of the home's foundation. Um, Next little element, it was the condition. The condition, let's see, was discovered within a reasonable time because it was discovered only 2 months after closing. Thus, the man may recover the $5,000 in damage. And that's it. This is a fine answer. Is this the best answer I've ever written? No. 450 words. Not bad. And I didn't even take the full 30 minutes. I'm coming up on it. I don't recommend that you copy all of the facts. I recommend that you type because you can't copy paste, number one. Um, so you can't copy paste. Number one, just type in the relevant facts for your fact pattern. Somebody's asking, does it help if you know specific laws on an essay? Like, no, not really. So like California, the only time that comes up is like if you're in a UBE state and you're doing family law, but you know that you're in a community property state, then you apply community property principles, but that's it. And that's not a whole lot of places. So no, it's not going to do anything. Don't go like just answer the question asked. Act as though you're like just someone fresh out of law school and you don't really have that life experience that would have taught you these like very unique SB 800 that is not tested on the bar. All right. Somebody asked, and this is a good question, is another reason the mayor would not be liable or not be able to force the utility company to remove the lines due to the fact that there's a more practical solution? I wouldn't say the rule on that, but I would imagine in real life that the court might consider that whether they're gonna like, do an injunction or not an injunction, but require like not specific performance. I don't know what it is, but provide that specific remedy to do that thing. And your conclusion should always respond to the call of the question. Yes. Okay, how's everybody doing? How is everybody? You're doing all right? All right. You want to talk fact use in an essay? How are you feeling about writing essays and it's doable, right? Does it feel attainable? Good. There are a lot of goods, and there's a lot of people here tonight, which I'm thrilled about. And also, if you know other people that you think would benefit, please tell everybody that you know. Um, it really does take practice. Also, I make it look really easy. That's the point, right? That's why I'm here. That's why you are here, right? Is I am supposed to make it look incredibly easy. And keep that in mind. It's hard. It's definitely a hard thing to do. You still have rules to know, but don't let you feeling like you don't know every single rule stop you from practicing and stop you from trying. So, but yeah, this is step by step. We go through everything, and I'm going to walk you through in the courses for the essays. I'm going to walk you through 2 essays in every subject like this. Plus, we have study schedule. There's essays, ones that teach you how to write the analysis, how to write counter arguments. So much. It goes way beyond the live classes. The live classes, we're holding them accountable, making sure you do the work, that you do the practice. So that's the goal. Um, yeah, and when handwriting, we're going to talk about that. How do you do that? Yeah. Um, oh no, somebody's all right. Idanya, I will get to that at the end. All right, let's just do one little more practice on a California property essay. So I'm gonna get my Word doc back up here. And sorry if you can hear my dog barking. My mother just got to the house. Sorry, everybody. Everybody, give me just 1 second. Let me get this pulled up. So we're gonna look at one of my favorite property essays, and I'm just gonna talk about a couple of things. We're not gonna do everything with it. So give me just a moment. And if you've done my workshops before, or if you've come to any of the free stuff, this is one of my favorite questions to look at. I have so much fun with it. Okay, I think it's here. Okay, yeah. So, so here we have this question. So it says, what defenses may Donna reasonably raise and how are they likely to fare? Discuss. All right. So everybody just take a minute and read through this. And I'm just going to walk through and do some headings with you all. That's it. And show you some fact use stuff. Somebody's asking what year and month the essay is. It's February 2012 from California. And somebody said, geez, Perry sucks. I agree, Ben. All right, I'm going to just dig into this. So it says, what defenses may Donna reasonably raise and how are they likely to fare? Donna was looking for a place to live. Perry owned a two-story home with a second story available to lease. Donna and Perry signed a 2-year lease that provided in part lessee may assign the lease premises with only the prior written consent of the lessor. Upon moving in, Donna discovered that the water in her shower became very hot if Perry ran water downstairs. When Donna complained to Perry about the shower and asked him to make repairs, Perry refused, saying, I'll just make sure not to run the water when you're in the shower, which a little weird. Perry soon adopted a new diet featuring strong smelling cheese. Donna told Perry that the smell of the cheese annoyed and nauseated her. Perry replied, too bad, that's my diet now. So yes, somebody said in the comments, Perry sucks. All right. So after constantly smelling the cheese for 3 weeks, Donna decided to move out and to assign the lease to a friend who was a wealthy historian, which, whatever. Donna sought Perry's consent to assign the lease to her friend. Perry refused to consent, saying, I've had bad experiences with historians, especially wealthy ones. Thereafter, every time Donna took a shower, Perry deliberately ran the water downstairs. Um, After 2 weeks of worrying about taking a shower for fear of being scalded, and with the odor of cheese still pervasive, Donna stopped paying rent, returned the key, and moved out. at that time, there were 22 months remaining on the lease. Perry has sued Donna for breach of the lease, seeking damages for past due rent and for prospective rent through the end of the lease term. So again, what defenses may Donna reasonably raise and how are they likely to fare? So I'm just going to start. I'm going to think about this. So Donna's defenses. Okay, so first we're going to dig into, well, what type of lease is this? Right? So just generally speaking, that's something in California you want to address, UBE you wouldn't need to address, but we're going to talk about the type of lease. Also, it's a lease subject to the statute of frauds. Okay, then I might want to talk about the assignment clause that actually comes up later. But there is an assignment clause, so I'm just going to list it as my issue here. Then I want to talk about the implied warranties. So there's the implied warranty of habitability, okay, which requires a few different things. So first you have to show that there was a breach. So breach, and then you also have to provide notice. So I'm going to include both of those things. So, and then remedies. Yeah, remedies. So implied warranty of habitability, and then there's also the implied covenant of quiet enjoyment. So I want to walk through a little bit about the various issues that are here. So there's really three different issues going on, right? So first, upon moving in, she discovered this issue. So we have the scalding hot shower upon move-in, right? Then we have the strong smelling cheese. Then we have the intentional scalding. So there's three different instances where there are potential violations. So what you would really do is implied warranty of habitability for shower at move-in, and to talk about the breach. Did they provide notice? What are the remedies? You might not break it down this much, but I just want to point that out. Then let's see, the stinky cheese, right? And then intentional scalding. And then implied covenant of quiet enjoyment, which you'd want to break down a little bit more, potentially talking about how there's a constructive eviction. So implied covenant of quiet enjoyment. And again, we have these same things. So shower at move-in. You don't have to organize it this way. Let's just do, I rarely use copy paste, but here it helps. So stinky cheese and shower intentional scalding. So I just want to show you, like, you want to think about, like, okay, so you've seen implied warranty of habitability, you've seen covenant of quiet enjoyment, you've seen the issue with the shower and the cheese, but did you see that there was actually two distinct issues with the shower? And it's getting to know how to read fact patterns, which I'm just doing a tiny little teaser tonight. But the fact that they show you and they separate it in paragraphs, upon moving in, Donna discovered this issue with the shower, right? So, okay, is there a breach at move-in? Yeah, there is. Did she provide notice? Yeah. Did he remedy it? Is him saying, I'll make sure not to run the water when you're in the shower, is that really an adequate remedy? I don't know. Right? I wouldn't like that. There's like something inherently creepy to me about that, but like I'm not going to try to get in all of my stuff about that with this, weird landlord. Okay. And then what about the stinky cheese? Is that really, does that really get at the warranty of habitability? Maybe, maybe not. It's making her nauseous, but it's a little tricky. Did he remedy it? No. And then what are her remedies? Did she provide notice and an opportunity to repair? And he says no. He outright says he's not going to do it. And then, when he's intentionally scalding her, it's absolutely a violation, right? So there's a little bit of ambiguity initially. There's definitely, there's maybe not a violation of habitability for the cheese, and there's definitely a violation here. And yeah, you could organize. Somebody asked, could you organize by the shower, cheese to scalding, and then do the warranties underneath each? Yeah, you can do it either way. It's completely fine. So it doesn't really matter. And you don't have to include these subheadings, but I just like to point out that there's legal issues and there's factual issues and there's variance in them. There's ambiguity about whether there's a violation initially. And not seeing that people will do this essay and they're like, yeah, but I saw that it implied warranty of habitability. And I saw a lot of people don't even talk about both breaches for all of the issues. They think just because they talked about warranty of habitability and quiet enjoyment that they got all the points, but they so missed so many of the factual issues. So I just wanted to point that out and show you some of the stuff that we're going to get into also in the course. Um, all right. That is it for this evening. For those of you that are here live, hang out for a second, have a little special treat. And also just keep in mind, come back next week for con law. So come back next week for con law. I'm super excited about that. We'll have details in the email, the invite that we send out each week, inviting you to these free webinars. And just please tell everybody that you know about these, please. I would appreciate it so, so, so much. So I will see you guys next week. Thanks so much for coming.